this is Medievalists.net, and we are here at the International Congress on Medieval Studies, and we have a special treat today because we are here with a father and a son who both have just given papers. We have here Bernard Bachrach from the University of Minnesota and David Bachrach from the University of New Hampshire. And they both are medieval military historians, and I just kind of, first of all, I'll start with you, Bertie. You know, when you were kind of like being starting off teaching, and Dave is a little guy in your lap, were you like talking to him about medieval warfare and speaking and telling him about that? Like, how were you?
When we were living in France in 1973-74, and there were any number of French stories which have like asterisks and so on. So I used to read them to him, but he didn't really understand. I never thought he understood them, but he may have. So that was his introduction. Then he would borrow books from me when he got a little older. And he started borrowing books that were pretty complex, books that my students wouldn't even read. And I think he got hooked on the Middle Ages, and I don't know if he got hooked immediately on the military stuff.
No, I think of myself more as an administrative historian who just always does military things. That's true. No, actually, the thing that got me hooked, and I like to tell the story. We were in Paris, sitting below Notre Dame in 1982, and both of us have a fear of heights. And my brother and my mother do not. And so they went to the top of Notre Dame, and I was bored. And so he was working on the book about Folk Nera and was working on folks' castle policy. So he took out a piece of paper and a pencil, and he drew me a pattern of Folk Nera's castles, and showed me why that when you move up this river valley, this castle protects this river, and why you move up this river valley, this castle moves up this river. And that always stuck with me. A couple years before that, I'd been to one of his classes, and he'd gotten all the slides upside down. And he was teaching a class about why it was the stirrup was not the dominant force in medieval military technology in the Middle Ages, but I always remember that he got the slides upside down, and you combine that with a picture of a map of castles below Notre Dame, and that was it.
Actually, an administrative history is interested in nuts and bolts, so he wrote 5 articles on crossbow bolts.
Wow. Now, you've kind of like seen how your father's dealt with dealing with academic matters and being a professor and the challenges of being a student. Like, and then you've had to kind of started off, you've been doing this for several years. As your now the way you've done it, has it changed the way like you thought, this is not how my father was working?
Well, I have a lot of advantages. I can do research in a tenth the time because of internet resources. Everything, so much stuff is online. I can get interlibrary loan things and like that. I can get articles immediately and things like JSTOR. So, I mean, in those senses, my life is a lot easier than his. I work on a computer. I don't work on a typewriter. When I was a kid, I could hear him clack, clack, clacking on a typewriter. And you know, these are not things that I need to do. So, in that sense, my life is a lot easier.
But I had a typewriter. One of my teachers, Francois Gansoff, wrote everything by hand.
The technological change is one thing, but also like there's different ways now of dealing with students. Like in your generation, you might have you have one expectations for students just the way, and your students that you're having now, like you might have to coddle them more.
Oh, I don't.
No, okay.
Certainly not graduate students.
Oh, okay, but like undergrad.
Undergraduate students become problematic. I teach, for example, sometimes a medieval survey with 120 students in it, and if 10 of those students really are interested, because courses have been structured in such a way that you get writing credit, you get
general education credit,
you get diversity credit, you get non-European credit, and if your course covers a lot of those things, you can get 100 people in the class, of whom maybe 5 are interested in what you're teaching, and everybody else is dealing with what I jokingly call a Chinese menu. 1 from column A, 1 from column B, 2 from column C. And if you get enough columns filled in, you can fill up your classes.
And like also, what about dealing with publishers? Like, have you noticed like now there seems to be a lot more demand for medieval warfare textbooks there might be more publishers out there than there were 20 years ago or 25 years ago. Like, how do you find that kind of change? Like,
I have not had any trouble publishing anything. I think it depends on what you write. I think if you write on an interesting topic that is not overly esoteric and you write in a pleasing style, then you can get your book published, as long as you do a good job. If you write on extraordinarily esoteric things, then you're going to have a hard time. Military history, fortunately, is not particularly esoteric.
No.
The big problem that commercial publishers and even university press publishers have in publishing military history is they fail to realize that people who are true military history buffs want to see lots of footnotes. They want to see lots of information. They want to be on the inside of things. And a lot of these publishers insist upon publishing glossy books with lots of pictures, and they just tend to be repetitive, one picture book after another. And the kinds of people who will be on De Re Militari, who are not academics, really want to see the inside of how things work. Now, they may not know Latin, but you can always translate. But there's a big problem there with the publishers. They think they're going to get a popular audience, and what they're doing is they're losing the serious military buffs.
One last question is that you've both worked on one translation of a work, and are like, you could even talk about that experience, but also, like, are you planning other things where you both are going to be working on kind of the same kind of?
Well, we've published, what, about half a dozen articles now?
Well, we published three. We're working on another.
A big one.
Big one right now.
Cost of Artonian castle building on the eastern frontier.
And we're also working on thinking about putting together a volume on Angevin military organization and Angevin military planning. What are we calling it? A handbook of Angevin warfare something.
Oh, the Angevin Way of War.
Angevin Way of War. A book of essays. And actually the two papers that we gave today, and hopefully we'll get a couple of sessions next time, we'll get another 6, 7 papers, and hopefully we'll be able to put together a volume.
And if Henry II counts as an Angevin, which I think he does, we may have somebody willing to come over from the Norman side of things.
And if Cliff Rogers wants to go back in time and do real history instead of journalism, then maybe we can get Cliff to give a paper too.
Well, with that, I'll let you guys off the hot seat, and thank you so much.
Thank you.